John Merline was writing in Investors Business Daily just the other day, and we've passed the 3-year anniversary of the Obama stimulus package. They promised they would create 3.5 million jobs. The fact, 3 years later, the civilian labor force has shrunk by 126,000. Unemployment is still at 8.3, unchanged over those years. Household income 7% below where it was 3 years ago. And the national debt in 3 years is up 41%, which means we've added $4.5 trillion to our long-term debt. These things are all alarming to me, and I think they should be to everyone. And the question, Congressman, what do you and your colleagues that are conservative have planned that will stall this and hopefully save the republic?
Dan, we have been on a mission since I was elected in 2010 and arrived as a voice of the people of eastern and southeastern Ohio in January of 2011 to cut federal spending, to reduce the size of the federal government, to balance the budget, and to reel in this out of control spending. Our economy is in terrible shape, but it's not because Americans are taxed too little. It's because the federal government spends too much. I think you probably remember that Admiral Mullins, former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, said the greatest threat to our national security is the national debt. You just mentioned it's now over $15 trillion and rising. This president has accumulated and amassed more debt than any presidents before him, all combined.
And your Congressman Johnson, they asked for $787 billion for the stimulus package. It really came in at $825 billion, and now he is asking for an additional $350 billion for short-term job growth over the next 4 years.
It's not going to work now, Dan. We lost more jobs than we gained. The stimulus package that was supposed to keep unemployment below 8%, we've never seen unemployment below 8%. And by the way, if you include, as you just pointed out, all of the number of people that have left the job market because they have simply given up hope, the unemployment rate is actually around 15.4%. America is still unemployed.
Well, you have the civilian labor force that has shrunk. I don't have the numbers for the public labor force, but the civilian labor force, according to Investors Business Daily, has shrunk by 126,000 over the Obama days. And so we have less people in this. But I guess I come back to this, and I am somewhat concerned about this, is do we have enough good Americans out here who are willing to look at the situation as it really is? And the situation, I believe, is that we are in a long-term contraction in our society. We are going to all have to take less, and are you in Congress ready to rally the people to tell them the truth?
Oh, absolutely. And we continue to do that, Dan. You know, we've passed over 30 jobs bills. It's very, very clear that this president's policies are not only hurting the American taxpayer, but it's making our economy worse. He can't run on his record of pro-job growth because he doesn't have one, and so he's resorting to the politics of envy and division. But if you look at the 30-plus jobs bills that we have sent to the Senate, and they sit there languishing, we are doing everything we can to try and force this administration to do what is responsible for the American people and to hold Washington accountable. Have you heard of my Pass a Budget Now Act?
Yes, I did, and you've talked to me for the last couple of weeks about that. If you don't pass a budget, you don't get paid.
Absolutely. I don't understand why Congress thinks it should earn a paycheck if it doesn't do what the American people sent it here to do.
Yeah. You know, Congressman, I like the idea. At least you're doing something. You're putting this out here. But in the long run, if in fact we get to the point where we're only paying interest, all of these things out here, and I've done a doomsday show here about, people's direct cards are not working, their food stamps aren't working. All of these things that the government now gives, they're not working. And the fact of it is that people have to realize that this is at the heart of this, and the president really wants to do more of this. He wants another stimulus package.
Yeah, absolutely he does, and it's not the right plan for America. It's not about taxing Americans more. It's about subsidizing them less so that we can get America back to work. And when you look at the fact that over 70% of Americans favor a balanced budget, when you look at the fact that over 50%, well in advance of 50%, of Americans feel that we are not on the right path and that this president's policies are hurting Americans. Back to your question is, are there enough Americans to make a difference? Yes, there are. I just hope and pray that enough Americans come out in November and make this president a one-term president, and so we can get some responsible leadership in the White House that really understands that the heartbeat of America has more to do with what happens around the dinner table than what happens in the halls of Congress.
Yeah, and before we move on here, I just got a couple of minutes here, Congressman Johnson. The fuel prices that are going up right now. I mentioned earlier that I think one of the things that is fueling this, and I'm no great mind, but I'm going to this and saying because of the monies that we are spending, people are rejecting the dollar and people are charging more of a premium to take these dollars, and it's driving up the dollar is buying less on the open market.
Well, I can tell you that the key to the price of gas at the pumps is an all-of-the-above national energy policy. You know, the president says that, but his actions do right the opposite. There have been restrictions on drilling. In 2011, the domestic oil production on federal lands decreased by 11%. Any increase in domestic energy production has occurred on private lands or state-owned lands where the federal government has little to no control. The rejection of the Keystone XL pipeline, and now the EPA's trying to insert themselves into the fracking process for natural gas. It's just more regulations on top of more regulations designed to marginalize the private sector.
Could the federal EPA trump the Ohio EPA and hurt fracking in Ohio?
Well, they can certainly try, and it's going to be up to people like myself and other conservative Republicans here in the House of Representatives to hold them accountable. Fortunately, they've got to come to us for funding.
All right.
And I can tell you that we're going to be going after those kinds of onerous regulatory burdens for the rest of this year.